Sail away, honey, now, now. Sail away, what will be where we? I wanna hold you now. Crazy skies about the bubbling. Wind just howling at my face, and everything I held so dear disappeared without a trace. Of all the times I've tasted love, I never knew quite what I had. Little darling, if you hear me now, never need you so bad. Spinning around inside my head. Sail away with me, honey, I put my heart in your hand. Sail away with me, honey, now. Sail away with me, what will be where we? I'll hold you now. I'm talking drunk gibberish, falling in and out of bars, trying to get some explanation here. By the way some people are, how did it ever get so far? You sail away with me, honey, I put my heart in your hand. Sail away with me, honey, now, now. Sail away with me, what will be where we? Sail away with me, honey, I put my heart in your hand. You bring me up and you let me down. Whoa, sail away with me, what will be where we? I wanna hold you now, now, now.
If I could just invite everyone to turn off their mobile phones, please, for the duration of the service. Thank you. We gather today to give thanks for, to pay tribute to, and to celebrate the life of Niall Carney. During this service, we will recall many memories of Niall, for we are grateful for the gift of having known such a special man, whose actions, words, and love has touched so many of us in such special and enduring ways. Through this service, we will try to bring some comfort to his wife, Nicola, his siblings, Micheál, Patrick, Deirdre, Gerry, Bernadette, and Maura, his sister-in-laws, Margaret, Dolores, and Eileen, and his brother-in-law, Alan, but also all of his nephews and nieces, as well as Nicola's family, along with so many, many dear friends and neighbours who have been deeply affected by his passing. We also acknowledge the many people who are joining us today online to pay their respects, and we are profoundly grateful for your presence here this morning. This ceremony, therefore, is a celebration of Niall with all of those who truly loved him. My name is Miriam Fitzgerald, and I'm honoured to be asked to perform this ceremony today, celebrating the life of this truly wonderful man. And so this morning we have put aside our usual daily activities for a while and gathered here together to give expression to the thoughts and feelings that well up in us at this time of loss. Because in one way or another, Niall's death affects us all. All life is compiled of stories. Stories where we achieved, lost, suffered, loved, hurt, cried, and laughed. Stories give meaning and purpose to our lives. And today, we gather to share some stories of a very special man, a man whom you were all privileged to know and to love. As we move through life, we spend our years as a tale that is told. This is the way of the world. But love endures forever. From birth, through life, to physical death, we pass through many stages of learning, but if we are fortunate along the way, we will find our rightful place. A place where we are truly loved for who we are, not what we are. And I know with deep conviction that Niall found that place with his wife, Nicola. The love they shared was palpable, sincere, and when you were in its presence, you couldn't help but be affected by it. I had the great privilege of meeting Niall and Nicola some years back and being fortunate enough to perform their wedding ceremony in Trim Castle Hotel on the 31st of May 2019. What struck me then was when I met Niall was his quiet integrity, his sincerity, and his beautiful smile. When he spoke so softly, and yet with a deep honesty and conviction. He exuded kindness. Gentle and big-hearted, Niall had many interests: a love of reading, a love of music, some of which will be shared throughout the service. He was deeply interested in First Nation mythology and its symbolism, but also the Viking and Nordic myths too. About 4 years ago, he had the raven and Thor's hammer tattooed on his upper arm. And when talking to Nicola, she told me that she always believed Niall was a warrior at heart. He was her hero in every way. Warriors in our tradition are not fighters. In fact, they are peacemakers. Warriors hold the space to enable healing to occur. They keep pain and suffering away from those they love. So, yes, in facing his illness with superhuman dignity, Niall proved himself once more to be a warrior in every way. And so now we will listen to a very special piece of music Carl Jenkins's Benedictus, the Armed Man, which was so very dear to Niall and Nicola, and it will be played today by Joanne and Ronan and some of their colleagues. Nicola will now come forward to share a poem and a eulogy alongside some treasured memories of Niall.
I just want to begin by thanking Miriam, Ronan and Joanne for this ceremony today. I could not have imagined doing this without them. I could share my feelings of sadness and despair, but I'm so grateful that Niall is out of pain and finally free from his bed in room 22, New Grange 3, Our Ladies of Lourdes Hospital here in Drogheda. Even as he physically deteriorated, his spirit soared. The way he faced his death was inspirational. I felt privileged to witness a heightened vitality within those qualities I've been fortunate enough to depend upon. His strength, his calmness, alongside his practical and good-natured acceptance of the most dire situation. He was my world and the absolute love of my life. I'd long considered our relationship to be my biggest achievement, the fact that, most of the time, I knew how lucky I was. Niall is the reason that home is my favourite word of all. I wanted to tell the story of the last few weeks of his life. When his back pain turned chronic, the week beginning the 11th of November, my sister Rachel dropped Niall and me to A&E, where we expected to be waiting hours. However, following an initial examination, we swiftly moved through to a cubicle where Niall underwent all sorts of tests. About 8 hours later, following a CT scan, he was rushed into theatre and I went home. The next morning we heard that the scan had showed a complicated mess, but we didn't pay any attention to that as he was in so much pain. On Wednesday, the 20th of November, Niall's surgeon told us that Niall was seriously ill with stage 4 stomach cancer. When I asked about a second operation, he reluctantly explained that they could do nothing for him as his internal organs were covered in tumours, although they did request another X-ray in an effort to do something. This meant a whole lot to me. Over the next week or so, Niall endured terrible pain as his medical team strove to find the right solution of painkillers. The 7 days we spent waiting to hear from the oncologist were probably the most horrible of the last few weeks. As the hours mounted up with no new information, the situation grew more and more unbearable. All we hoped for was a treatment plan involving operations along with any amount of chemo and radiation, which had been my 2018, a path already familiar to us. On Wednesday, the 27th of November, the oncologist told us as gently as he could that Niall was too ill for treatment. He might have been surprised at our reaction, but the relief at finally knowing what we were dealing with was tremendous. Of course, we asked how long Niall had left and worked the professor's estimation down to 5 months. We felt rich in time that Wednesday. Niall told me that thanks to his parents' attitude to death, he was not afraid to die. His only regret was not getting to Canada, something we were starting to plan for next year. A couple of weeks later, he confessed that silly things made him sad. For instance, he was enjoying a series of books by a particular writer whose new book wasn't due out until next February. Also, he regretted missing out on next year's football season. I told him there was nothing silly about any of that. We had nothing prepared. No wills, no joint bank account. Niall always took care of everything and told me to just concentrate on writing. I contacted a local solicitor who came into the hospital on the 30th of November, a Saturday afternoon, to do our wills. Just before she arrived, Niall was taken away for an MRI. The solicitor sat with me and was there to see his return, his agony as the nurses switched him from a stretcher back to his own bed. The timing could not be worse, and I was sure that Niall would snap as the solicitor asked him if he was ready to sign the papers. Instead, he gestured towards me and said, "If I don't sign them, she'll kill me." He still had a sense of humour, which allowed the solicitor to relax. When I told him afterwards that I was proud of him, he explained that he felt bad for the solicitor having to come in on her day off. On Wednesday, the 11th of December, he informed the nurses that he didn't want to be that man, someone who demands all their attention. They were to tell him if he was being difficult, but they never did. He was on a lot of drugs. At one point, he told me not to tell the doctors that he could see cats everywhere. I was encouraged to bring our home into room 22, and this I did with the photos that you see around the church, cushions, fairy lights, and Christmas tinsel. Out of all the photos of us in local restaurants or standing on top of Mount Vesuvius 3 years ago, he was most delighted with the ones of our cat Tony, his other great love. He introduced Tony's photos to all the nurses and rang me one morning to say that a doctor had come in because he heard we had named our cat after his good friend Tony Houlihan, which we had. We had a date night in room 22 on Friday the 13th of December. This was something we'd started in lockdown: Friday night wine, pizza and a film or two. I was nervous as Niall seemed much too excited about this little treat. When I got in that evening, he was feeling sad, telling me he felt he had lost a vital part of himself that day. I had most of my pizza eaten before he asked for his. He did his best. 3 small slices and half a cup of red wine, which he did not enjoy, yet he thanked me, telling me that he felt back to himself once more. He ordered new books, explaining that he needed little wins, something to look forward to. On Saturday, the 14th of December, when we should have been in Belgium enjoying the Christmas markets, Niall told me that he had chosen presents for me online, but don't get too excited, he said. I was stoned at the time, I'm not exactly sure what I ordered. The following morning, I walked into room 22, where Niall was waiting to get my opinion on a black waistcoat and tie from an ad that had popped up on his phone. For the coffin, he said, it'll go with my wedding jacket and trousers. He placed his order, and when it arrived, he had me photograph the waistcoat and the tie against his red velvet wedding jacket and was genuinely delighted with the result. He wanted me to pass on this message to his sisters, his brothers, sister-in-laws, brother-in-laws, nieces and nephews. We suffered a huge loss with the death of the father 2 years ago, and then when the mother died, the centre of our family was gone. I know my timing sucks, but I think the last few weeks brought us closer together again. Promise me that you will continue to stick together and look out for one another. Niall's mother's funeral took place on the 16th of September. Niall and I had planned to go straight home after the family lunch in the Castle Arch Hotel in Trim. However, I begged him to go for just one drink in the pub his parents used to own, just opposite our bus stop. He wasn't feeling great, but agreed to, and then was happy when we were joined by several members of his family who'd had the same idea. It turned into a great night, and as usual, we didn't leave for the next bus or the bus after that. In fact, we needed a taxi back to Drogheda. A couple of days later, I asked Niall why we had left so late, a good hour after his sisters and brothers had gone. His answer was one he had had to repeat many times throughout our years together: because you wanted to dance. The day we learned that there would be no treatment and that time was short, this poem popped up on my Facebook page. I read it to Niall and we agreed that I would read it here today. She Danced by Brian Bilston. She danced like no one was watching, although she liked to think he was. The kitchen was her grand ballroom. Her partner was a mop. She'd foxtrot amongst the pots and pans. She'd passe doble to the sink. And as she swept across the floor, her mind danced too. She'd think of how he held her in his arms at the Locarno and the Ritz, whirling, waltzing a world apart in the years before all this. And longer still before the shadow the doctor spotted on his lungs, how dazzlingly they had danced, how dismally she had spun. Her neighbours saw her sometimes, shuffling bent back to the shops. But at home she danced like no one was watching, although she liked to think he was. Thank
you. Thank you, Nicola. It is because of these memories we have come together today, travelling from different places, and we are all at different stages on our journey through life. Our paths are varied and we look at life in different ways. But there is one thing we all have in common. At one point or another, to some degree or another, our lives have been touched by the life of Niall. So now let us pause briefly to think of Niall as we invite Niall's sister-in-laws, Lynn, Rachel and Gayle, and his nieces and nephew, Orla, Shane and Lee, to bring forward some items deeply personal to him. So we have here on the smaller table a tabletop cap from his South African trip when he was just out of hospital and still very shaky on his feet following 2 strokes in 2022. Niall decided to go to South Africa alone to see his favourite rugby team in action. This Munster t-shirt, Niall considered himself a Leinster man, having been in Leinster, but when it came to rugby, his heart belonged to Munster. He was also a lifelong Liverpool fan. Again, on the smaller table, the Viking raven ornament. This was Nicola's Christmas present to Niall in 2023. He believed the raven was his spiritual animal and had a big interest in the Viking way of life and of death. This photo of him and his parents Nora and Pat Carney, were the two biggest influences in his life. And his looking forward to seeing them again played a huge part in how he approached his death. His cat photo. Niall loved his cat, Tony. But he also took care of any cats that turned up in his back garden, and he would also go out at all hours to walk the streets if he heard a cat in distress. He joined Drogheda Animal Rescue in 2023 and had been looking forward to doing more for them. And the Count of Monte Cristo books. Aside from watching sport, Niall relied on his books and audiobooks to escape his worsening illness. His favourite book in the world was The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas, and he enjoyed listening to it as an audiobook, along with his other favourite, Shogun by James Clavell. Books provided him with the perfect escape, and he could travel anywhere he wanted to while stuck in his hospital bed. Now, these items may seem mundane or crude to the untrained eye, yet to those of you who knew and loved him, these items encapsulate a lifetime of memories and stories of a truly special man. We're going to sit for some music now, and Ronan is going to sing the song Iris, which was played at Niall and Nicola's wedding.
I give up forever to touch you, 'cause I know that you feel somehow. You're the closest to heaven that I'll ever be, and I don't want to go home right now. And all I can taste is this moment, and all I can breathe is your light. And sooner or later it's over, I just don't want to miss you tonight. And I don't want the world to see me, 'cause I don't think that they'd understand. When everything's made to be broken, I just want you to know who I am. And you can't fight the tears that come, or the moment of truth in your eyes. When everything feels like the movies, yeah, you bleed just to know you're alive. And I don't want the world to see me, 'cause I don't think that they'd understand. When everything's made to be broken, I just want you to know who I am. Don't want the world to see me, 'cause I don't think that they'd understand. When everything's made to be broken, I just want you to know who I am. And I don't want the world to see me, 'cause I don't think that they'd understand. When everything's made to be broken, I just want you to know who I am. I just want you to know who I am. I just want you to know who I am.
Can I now please invite Ashley to step forward to read Maya Angelou's poem, When Great Trees Fall.
When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder, lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber after safety. When great trees fall in forests, small things recoil into silence, their senses eroded beyond fear. When great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, sterile. We breathe briefly. Our eyes briefly see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory, suddenly sharpened, examines, gnaws on kind words unsaid, promise walks never taken. Great souls die, and our reality bound to them takes leave of us. Our souls, dependent upon their nurture, now shrink, wizened. Our minds, formed and informed by their radiance, fall away. We are not so much maddened as reduced to unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms, slowly and always irregularly. Spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses, restored, never to be the same, whisper to us, they existed. They existed. We can be and be better, for they existed. Thank you.
I'm now going to share a story from some of the First Nations in Canada, a place where Niall and Nicola intended to travel next year. Now, there are many variants of this story which explain how the raven delivered the sun, moon, stars, and fire to humanity. These treasures are necessary for human survival, but all comes at the cost of the raven's suffering. And so it goes. A powerful shaman, hostile toward people, had kept these treasures hidden beneath the sea. Raven, disguised as a white owl, was able to win the shaman's trust. And once this was achieved, he had access to the treasures. Raven then released them, one by one, for the benefit of humanity. In the story of the sun, which gives life to all things, the raven, having taken it from the shaman, carried the sun upwards. In doing so, his feathers were burned black and his claws became shriveled. Because he had to carry it, he had to carry it so high and for so long before he could release it into the sky. The raven thus brought light to the world. And the symbolism of the raven's sacrifice to make the world better and brighter for humanity cannot be lost on us today. Niall's suffering also came at a great cost. However, it has not dimmed the light he has brought to this world. His light sustains us, like that of the raven, and will give us comfort in the days and weeks to come. I now wish to invite Niall's father-in-law, Nicholas, to come forward to read a poem written by Sir Henry Scott Holland.
Death is nothing at all. It does not count. I have only slipped away into the next room. Nothing has happened. Everything remains exactly as it was. I am I, and you are you. And the old life that we lived so fondly together is untouched, unchanged. Whatever we were to each other, that we are still. Call me by the old familiar name. Speak of me in the easy way which you always used. Put no difference into your tone. Wear no forced air or solemnity or sorrow. Laugh as we always laughed at little jokes that we enjoyed together. Play, smile, think of me, pray for me. Let my name be ever the household word that it always was. Let it be spoken without an effort, without the ghost of a shadow upon it. Life means all that it ever meant. It is the same as it ever was. Why should I be out of mind because I am out of sight? I am but waiting for you, for an interval, somewhere very near, just round the corner. All is well. Nothing is hurt. Nothing is lost. One brief moment and all will be as it was before. And how we shall laugh at the trouble of parting when we meet again. Thank you.
Before we go to the closing, on behalf of Niall's wife Nicola and the many, many dear family and friends gathered here today, I would like to extend their heartfelt gratitude to you all for supporting them through this very difficult time. I also want to thank Michael and the team here at Gerard's Funeral Directors for their support and guidance. Profound gratitude to the palliative care team at Lourdes Hospital, who have supported Niall and Nicola throughout his illness. Friends like next door neighbours Stephen and Pamela, and Niall's boss Sinead Hand also provided immense help and comfort. Niall and Nicola want to thank all their friends and neighbours for the messages, lighted candles and good wishes. The outpouring of support they received from their family, friends and neighbours was truly astounding and gave them many boosts during their darkest days. Our final poem today is Bishop Brent's The Ship, and that will be read by Caitlin.
What is dying? I am standing on the seashore. A ship sails in the morning breeze and starts for the ocean. He is an object of beauty, and I stand watching him till at last he fades on the horizon, and someone at my side says, he is gone. Gone? Where? Gone from my sight, that is all. He is just as large in the mast, hull and spars as he was when I saw him, and just as able to bear his load of living fright to its destination. The diminished size and total loss of sight is in me, not in him. And just at that moment, when someone at my side says, he is gone, there are others who are watching him coming, and other voices take up a glad shout, here he comes, and that is dying.
Thank you, Caitlin. So it is, pardon me. So it is only natural that we should feel sad today in some respects, because in a very physical sense, Niall is no longer here with us. We must die, we know, said a character in Shakespeare. 'Tis but the time and drawing days out that men stand upon. And so today we have all come to ponder the life of a truly wonderful man, a man whom you are all very privileged to know and to love. For we have a powerful sense of loss, and one purpose of this service was in some way to try to reconcile that sense of loss. So today will be a day of memories, and today will be remembered for many reasons. But mainly I hope it will be remembered as a special day, a day in which you gathered to share some time with others in order to acknowledge and remember a truly wonderful man. Love never ceases. Niall, we commit your memories to our hearts, just as we did with those of your parents, Pat and Nora, before you. These shared memories will sustain us in the days and weeks to come. Niall, you will live on in the stories that we share, bringing light to the world. For in the words of Alexander Dumas, the friends we have lost do not repose under the ground. They are buried deep in our hearts. It has been thus ordained that they may always accompany us. So Niall, you will always be carried with us in our hearts. On behalf of his wife Nicola and all of the Carney family, siblings and extended family, I want to thank everyone who came today to support them and to help us celebrate Niall's life. It is greatly appreciated. Nicola and the Carney family would like you all to join them in the Divine Restaurant here in Drogheda. And now to draw the ceremony to a close. As we prepare to leave this space, we will pause to reflect in a very simple and private way, to remember Niall, and how, like the raven, he illuminated our lives. Let us spend a few moments in silence before the final song begins, and if you have a belief, you might like to use this time to impart your own private prayer.
When you walk through the storm, hold your head up high, and don't be afraid of the light. At the end of storm, there's golden sun and the sweet silver song of love. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain. Though your dreams be tossed and blow, walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone.
If we can just allow the family to leave row by row, please, first.